Straight ahead, bitter battle amid the contentious clash in the GOP Senate primary runoff. Senator John Cornyn changes his mind and backs ending the filibuster to pass the election integrity bill called the Save America Act. We look at the political impact. Future plans. What's next for Democratic Congressman Mark Veasey now that he is giving up his seat in Congress, and why he decided against running for any other elected office. One-on-one, Republican Congressman Roger Williams discusses the ongoing shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security and the war against Iran. And new nominees. We speak with two Democrats about their statewide campaign plans for November and their priorities. Good morning, I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas starts now. Hello and happy Sunday. Hope you're having a great weekend. We begin once again with the Senate GOP runoff battle between Senator John Cornyn and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. The election integrity bill called the Save America Act has now become front and center in their clash. If approved, it will require voters show in-person proof of citizenship to register to vote and then show photo ID to vote. President Trump calls it his #1 priority, and it all comes following President Trump's comments that he intends to endorse one candidate and ask the other candidate to immediately drop out. The House passed the SAVE Act and sent it to the Senate, where Majority Leader John Thune has said he will take action on it this week. Last week, Senator Cornyn changed his long-standing view to protect the filibuster, which creates a threshold of 60 votes to pass most legislation to help the Senate pass the SAVE Act. In an op-ed for the New York Post, Cornyn said, quote, "After careful consideration, I support whatever changes to Senate rules that may prove necessary for us to get the Save America Act and Homeland Security funding past the Democrats' obstruction through the Senate and on the president's desk for his signature. I respectfully urge the remaining handful of my Republican colleagues still holding on to the old position that I used to share to reassess the new reality and update their thinking." In a post on X, Paxton responded by saying, quote, "John Cornyn did exactly what I predicted. In 1 week, I've made him more conservative than in the past 24 years. We spoke with Republican consultant Vinnie Minchillo about what this all means for the runoff and the potential endorsement by President Trump. But first, I wanted his thoughts on the primary results.
I was surprised by two things. That obviously whisker close race by, less than 2 points. But I was surprised that Cornyn came out ahead of Paxton. And I was really surprised how poorly Paxton performed in his home county in Collin County.
That's right, because he actually was behind Cornyn most of the night. Overnight, he came back and he won by 900 votes.
Right.
And so what does that say to you?
That says to me a couple of things. He's got problems in Collin County, but certainly Collin County knows him best, both the good and the bad. I don't know if you can extrapolate that to the whole state, but to me, that would be a red flag if I was the Paxton campaign.
What kind of impact would that have when the president does make an endorsement, if he does?
Right. And I think he will. He usually, when he says he's going to do something, he will do it. But I will tell you, the Paxton people feel like there is a world where they win the runoff, even if President Trump endorses Cornyn. So that's their opinion over there. But I think if the president comes out, he was very smart in his statement, because he said he's not only going to endorse, but he expects the non-endorsed candidate to pull out of the race. So it's sort of a twofer. If he endorses John Cornyn, he's got to make the second half of that come true and get Paxton out of the race. I'm not sure that's going to be so easy.
Paxton then reset the argument, and making it all about the SAVE Act, which is something that President Trump wholeheartedly supports. Was that a really brilliant move on the Paxton part?
Very good move on their part. For the most part, Cornyn and Paxton, if you look at their voting record, despite the ads and everything they say, their voting records would be very, very similar in the Senate. I don't think there's any big things they would be apart on, except for this. I mean, there's a perception that John Cornyn is holding up the SAVE Act. Whether he is or not, we don't know. And then Paxton, of course, very wholeheartedly in favor of the SAVE Act and to support President Trump. So for Paxton people, very smart move. It aligns him completely with President Trump and puts him across the table from John Cornyn. Of course, Cornyn today, as we talk, has written an op-ed in the New York Post, basically saying that he wants to pass the SAVE Act. Does that neutralize this threat? We'll have to see as the day goes on.
Senator Mike Lee of Utah came out last week and said, yes, Senator Cornyn has favored the SAVE Act from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So does that also neutralize?
It's really tough because now we're starting to get into processy things, and voters don't like processy things. So it's kind of like for a voter, I think voters want to know, gee, is Cornyn with Trump on this or not with Trump on this? Was he against Trump and now he's with Trump? I think how that is messaged is really what voters are going to look at.
Coming up next, Democratic Congressman Mark Veasey opens up for the first time about his decision not to run for re-election or any other elected office and what's next for him. Plus, from the war against Iran to the ongoing shutdown of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, we go one-on-one with Republican Congressman Roger Williams when Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Now to our interviews with two members of Congress from North Texas. First, we went one-on-one with Democrat Mark Veasey of Fort Worth, who spoke with us for the first time since he decided against running for re-election and for Tarrant County Judge. Plus, he also discussed what could come next.
It's been a long time since I haven't been on the ballot. It's been over 20 years since my name hasn't been on the ballot. And my name was actually still on the ballot.
Right.
I actually had to tell people that I had suspended my campaign for county judge here in Tarrant and that I had gotten behind Elisa Simmons. And so that was very odd in and of itself because there were people that were still coming up to me and telling me, hey, I voted for you. And the word just hadn't gotten out. And so it was different. But, I'm in a good place. I thought that I was going to be running for re-election in the U.S. House. It just didn't work out. And I'm looking forward to the role that I'm going to play, sort of sitting, as I say, on the other side of the desk and watching and helping Democratic candidates get elected here locally and statewide.
What does that look like after this cycle is done?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, we'll see. What I end up doing. I will know sometime by the end of the year what I'm going to be doing. I don't know now, but I'm looking forward. I know there's going to be a lot of opportunities.
You were considering running for the 30th congressional district, and then you decided to run for county judge before changing your mind. So talk to me about both of those considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that there was going to be an opportunity for me to run in Congressional District 30, but it just didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. There was another plan that was, going on there between, Jasmine and her pastor, Freddie Haynes. And he got in. I didn't know that he was going to get into the race, honestly, until the very last minute. It was like I had heard that he was going to get into the race on the Friday before the filing deadline, and that was the first time I'd heard his name. And then I heard that he was going to not be in, and then of course I heard that he filed on Monday morning before I was supposed to file. And so I think that for me, I saw that as a sign that maybe this was, not the best opportunity for me, after all. I think that I could have been, successful in a campaign like that. It obviously would have been a very tough race. I think that he would have been a formidable opponent. But I congratulate him on his win. I think that he's going to represent Congressional District 30 well. So many of the high schools over there do graduations at his church. People are very familiar with him. And I think that he's going to do a good job. I will also tell you that because I had to make my decision at the very last minute, because again, I thought that I was fouling in 30. Yeah. And when that just sort of, disintegrated and fell apart for me, I had to make my decision up in a few hours on whether or not I was going to file for county judge. And so I did that. And after some contemplation and some thought, several days after I filed, I was like, you know what? I don't think that I want to be the county judge right now. I just don't think that is the door that God is showing me that I should walk through right now. And so I just decided that I wasn't going to do it and decided to get behind Elisa. I'm going to do everything I can to help her beat Tim O'Hare.
You basically didn't want to run against Pastor Haynes.
I didn't think that primary was the primary for me at this point in time in my career. Again, I think that I could have been successful. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I would have lost. Who knows? But I do think that with the relationship that he had with Jasmine Crockett and her leaving the district, that if she wanted her pastor in the district, I thought that it was best that it perhaps be that way, and so I decided to not opt in there.
This weekend, the Arlington Grand Prix is racing through city streets. We also went one-on-one with Republican Congressman Roger Williams about the economic impact of the Grand Prix, plus the war against Iran and the ongoing shutdown of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security.
We had hotels, we had a flower shop, we had people that are job creators in this meeting on how they benefit by the 3 or 4 days of this great race. Money trickles down, and it's capitalism, it's entrepreneurship, and people, when they get more money, they spend more money, and they spend it right here in Texas, we hope.
And FIFA is coming up this summer. Are they also going to benefit from
Well, all the small businesses will. One thing about Arlington, it's special. I mean, with the Cowboys and the Rangers, and you got the soccer, the FIFA coming, and you got the Grand Prix, everybody's going to benefit. Everybody's going to have money spent on their business. They're gearing up for employees. We talked today about the big, beautiful bill that we passed in Congress that makes tax cuts permanent, cuts regulations for banks, but also allows no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, which a lot of folks in the restaurant business around here will be serving food and so forth. People earn more money, so and when they earn more money, we spend more money. That's the way it is here in America.
We have the DHS shut down, the Department of Homeland Security shut down, and we've now seen TSA agents quitting because they're not getting paid, and long lines at certain airports. Houston had a big problem with it, other airports across the country. And so how long is this going to go on for?
Well, first of all, this is the Democratic shutdown. I mean, they're trying to protest ICE. ICE has already been funded. ICE has been funded, so they're holding up the airport security, some of our military, holding them hostage over something that's already funded. It doesn't make sense, but it's just all political. We need to go ahead and get Homeland Security, the rest of the parts of that funded, so we can get back and people get paid and America can work again.
Democrats want changes to ICE after we saw the 2 deadly shootings in Minnesota. What do you say to that?
Not allowing America to operate, as we talk about that, I think is wrong. And again, you said it, they're focused on ICE. ICE is already funded.
But they want changes into how it's actually, how they carry out their functions.
I don't have any problem with changes. I mean, every industry goes through changes. I mean, regardless of what industry you're in, you can make things, get them improved, but you don't shut the industry down and so forth. So, there's some changes they want. There's probably some changes that should happen, but you don't shut it down, don't shut others down to pay that price. I think we need to open it up. We need to talk about it, negotiate, and see how we can make it better.
Well, hasn't that been going on?
It's going on and nothing's happening. I'm as frustrated as anybody.
The Iran war is going on. The president says it's going very well. Do you agree with that?
I think we've been at war now for 10 days. We've devastated them from the reports that we get and the reports that we get being in Congress. We can't have an Iran with a nuclear weapon. I mean, death to Israel, death to America, and it goes on and on and on, and finally you can only take so much. They were getting close to being able to use one of those weapons. I think we did exactly the right thing going in there and keeping them from being able to use that. Nobody wants a prolonged confrontation, so I hope that we begin to see an end and exit strategy, which I think we will soon, and so forth. But I believe it was totally the right thing to do at the right time.
I know there's been this conversation of, the president campaigned against forever wars. So how do you balance between, a long drawn-out conflict at the same time balancing out finishing the job that you started?
Well, and that's a tough decision, and when you make that decision, you don't want to err. You don't want to err on the side of our country. We want to make the right decision. What's good for America? Well, frankly, what's good for the world. These people were ready to destroy the world. So those are tough decisions that you make at tough times. But I think the quicker we can get in, the quicker we get out, it's going to be a lot better.
A man accused of plotting to assassinate President Trump and President Biden on behalf of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard was found guilty in federal court last week. Sarah Jenkins now with the brief.
47-year-old Asif Merchant said in court that he came to the U.S. in 2024 to hire hitmen to kill political figures, including Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Nikki Haley. But he claimed he was acting under pressure from Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard and feared his family in Iran would be harmed if he refused. He also said he believed he'd be caught before anyone was killed. Prosecutors say Merchant paid what he believed were hired killers $5,000 to carry out the plot. Those men were actually undercover FBI agents. Merchant was arrested in July 2024. Prosecutors say the case shows a real attempt to organize political assassinations, while the defense argues he acted out of fear and never intended for the plot to succeed. The Iranian government has denied plotting to kill President Trump or other U.S. officials. For The Brief, I'm Sarah Jenkins.
Thank you, Sarah. Up next, two Democratic nominees for Texas Comptroller and Agriculture Commissioner talk with us about their campaigns for the general election in November. When Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas comes right back. State Senator Sarah Eckhardt won the Democratic primary for Texas Comptroller, beating two other candidates. We spoke with her about her message to voters as she runs this November against Republican and former State Senator Don Huffines of Dallas, who we spoke with last week.
One-party rule for 3 decades is not healthy, whether it's Republican or Democrat. One-party rule, at the least, tolerates a level of inefficiency, and at the worst, it tolerates a level of abuse and is completely resistant to any kind of accountability. And while Don Huffines talks about doging and rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse, really he's talking about destroying government, actually, so that it's survival of the richest. It is important that we have a level playing field for all Texans, not just for the wealthiest.
And so if you are to be elected, what are your top priorities?
My top priorities are to make sure that we stop one-party rule, not because I want to get rid of the Republican Party. I want the Republican Party to be healthy again, frankly. I think that a purple Texas is a healthy Texas. And we can't expect that a Republican comptroller will be able to speak truth to power and actually say, listen, we need to reel this back, y'all. We need to we need to audit the voucher program and make sure that all Texans and the Texas legislature know how that program is actually performing. We also need to make an accounting of all the federal income tax dollars that we're leaving on the table up in Washington, D.C., in Medicare, in summer nutritional assistance program for poor kids, in emergency response dollars. The state of Texas and Texans are not getting the repatriation of their own federal tax dollars. And third, we also need to make sure that we end a tremendous transfer of our public dollars into private hands through corporate tax breaks, through no-bid contracts, and now through the voucher scheme.
Democrat Clayton Tucker, a rancher and organizer, ran unopposed in his party's primary for Texas Agriculture Commissioner. We spoke with him about his run against Republican newcomer Nate Sheets in November and his campaign priorities.
Food is too expensive, and it is not the farmers making the money. We've lost countless number of farms, actually about 250,000 since Reaganomics. So it is not the farmers making the money, it's the corporate monopolies. In Texas, the Ag Commissioner has some abilities to go after these corporate monopolies, which we plan to do. But one of the other big ones is what I mentioned towards the very end about water. We are very serious about these AI data centers coming into Texas. The more I learn about them and just how they operate and how they try to hide in the shadows, we're very concerned that they'll be taking a lot of our water. And we plan to try to put the brakes on them.
The AI centers, you want to stop their development. Does that mean put a moratorium on them, just stop them in their tracks? And how will you be able to do that?
So the ideal is to have a moratorium for a little bit amount of time, just so that we can uncover the truth about them. There's very little transparency in AI data centers as of right now. They don't tell you exactly how much water they use. They don't tell you exactly how much power they use. And they also don't explain how their supply chains also affect power. It's complicated. So ideally, I would like a moratorium just to make sure that if they have to come, they're done right. I really do want to also clarify something about these data centers. The ones they're building on our farmland are not for medical purposes. They're not for military purposes. They're for automation. They're for to eventually automate jobs away. They're for the AI slop using social media. Universities already have the data centers they need to figure out how do we cure cancer. The military has the data centers they need to keep us safe. The ones that are taking our farmland, that are taking our water, are nothing. They're not meant to help you and I. They're not meant to help our country. They are meant to enrich the greedy few.
And a friendly reminder, you can watch all our full interviews from today's show on our CBS Texas YouTube page. And once you're there, hit the subscribe button to make it easy for yourself. And that's all for Eye on Politics today. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week. And from all of us here, have a great Sunday.